On August 3, 2019, an ordinary day in El Paso, Texas, turned into a heartbreaking tragedy that shook not only the local community but the entire nation. What started as a regular shopping trip to a Walmart store quickly became a nightmare when a gunman entered the building and opened fire, killing 23 people and injuring dozens more. This was not just a random act of violence, it was a deliberate attack fueled by hatred, targeting the Hispanic community in a city known for its rich cultural diversity. The shooter arrived at the Walmart armed and ready to cause harm. Before the attack, he posted a manifesto online that expressed hateful and racist beliefs, revealing that his intent was to carry out a mass killing motivated by white nationalist ideology. This made the incident not only a mass shooting, but also an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime. The fact that someone could plan and execute such a violent act based on racial hatred sent shockwaves through the country and prompted widespread condemnation. The scale of the tragedy was immense. 23 innocent lives were taken that day: mothers, fathers, children, and grandparents. People who had gone to the store to shop, work, or simply spend time with family. Many others were left injured, some critically. The physical and emotional toll on the victims' families and the entire community was devastating and long-lasting. For many, the day remains a painful memory, a reminder of how quickly life can change in an instant. What followed the attack was a powerful display of resilience and solidarity. The city of El Paso, instead of falling apart under the weight of grief, came together to support one another. Community leaders, first responders, and volunteers worked tirelessly to provide aid, comfort, and resources to those affected. Vigils and memorials were held, where people gathered to honor the victims and stand against hate. The unity shown by El Pasoans inspired many across the country and demonstrated the strength of community in the face of tragedy. The shooting also reignited national conversations about gun control, domestic terrorism, and how to prevent such acts of violence in the future. It highlighted the urgent need to address the root causes of hatred and extremism in society. Lawmakers, activists, and citizens debated policies to improve background checks, restrict access to certain firearms, and enhance mental health services. The incident exposed gaps in security and raised important questions about how to balance constitutional rights with public safety. While the tragedy exposed deep wounds, it also brought out inspiring examples of courage and kindness. Stories emerged of strangers risking their own safety to help others escape the shooting. First responders acted quickly and bravely to save lives, and communities across the country showed support for El Paso through donations, messages of hope, and calls for change. These acts of bravery and compassion were a silver lining amid the darkness, and demonstrated humanity's ability to rise above hate. In the legal aftermath, the shooter was arrested and charged with capital murder and hate crimes. The trial served as a reminder of the consequences of such violent actions and the importance of justice for the victims and their families. It also brought renewed focus on the broader issues of domestic terrorism and hate-based violence, pushing for stronger preventative measures at every level of government. The El Paso Walmart shooting is a painful chapter in America's ongoing struggle with gun violence and hate crimes. It serves as a solemn reminder of how hatred can tear communities apart, but also how resilience and unity can help heal those wounds. Remembering the victims and learning from this tragedy is essential in the effort to build a safer, more inclusive society. It challenges us all to reflect on the values we hold and the kind of communities we want to create. In the end, the story of El Paso is not just about loss, it's about the power of people coming together to fight hate with hope, violence with kindness, and despair with determination. It's a call to action for everyone to stand against hate in all its forms and work toward a future where such tragedies become a thing of the past. In early 1993, a small rural compound just outside Waco, Texas, became the center of one of the most intense and tragic standoffs in modern U.S. history. This was the Mount Carmel Center, home to the Branch Davidians, a religious group led by a man named David Koresh. What began as a federal raid over alleged firearms violations quickly escalated into a 51-day siege that would end in flames, controversy, and the deaths of 76 people, including many women and children. David Koresh, born Vernon Wayne Howell, was a charismatic and controversial figure who claimed to be the final prophet of the Branch Davidians, a splinter group of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He preached apocalyptic messages, amassed a loyal group of followers, and was believed to be stockpiling weapons inside the compound. There were also disturbing allegations of child abuse and polygamy, with Koresh reportedly taking multiple spiritual wives, some of them minors. Federal authorities took notice. On February 28, 1993, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, launched a raid to serve a search warrant and arrest Koresh. But things didn't go as planned. The Davidians were tipped off, possibly by a local news crew asking for directions, and when agents approached, gunfire erupted. A fierce firefight left 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians dead. With the raid a disaster, the FBI quickly took over. What followed was a tense, drawn-out siege that lasted 51 days. The FBI used a mix of negotiation and psychological pressure tactics, including blaring loud music and harsh lights at night, cutting off power and supplies, and even using tanks to crush perimeter fences. Meanwhile, Koresh remained inside, refusing to surrender or release many of his followers. Negotiations led to the release of some children, but dozens of people, including Koresh, stayed inside. As the weeks dragged on, pressure mounted. On April 19, 1993, the FBI launched what it called a final effort to end the siege. Using tanks, they began pumping tear gas into the buildings to force the Davidians out. Hours later, fires broke out inside the compound. The flames spread rapidly, and within minutes the entire building was engulfed. 76 people died in the fire, including David Koresh. Only a handful of people made it out alive. The exact cause of the fire remains disputed. The government maintained that the Davidians set the fires themselves, while survivors and critics argued that the FBI's tactics triggered the blaze. The use of force, the siege strategy, and the tragic outcome sparked intense controversy and multiple investigations. The Waco siege left a deep scar on American law enforcement history and became a flashpoint for anti-government sentiment. It inspired books, documentaries, and public debate, and even played a role in radicalizing individuals like Timothy McVeigh, who cited Waco as a major reason behind the Oklahoma City bombing 2 years later. Today, Waco remains a powerful symbol of mistrust between some citizens and the federal government. The events of 1993 are a sobering reminder of what can happen when ideology, suspicion, and heavy-handed tactics collide in a high-stakes standoff. AMC's The Walking Dead wasn't just a zombie show, it was a cultural phenomenon. For years, it had us glued to our screens, biting our nails as ragtag survivors braved the apocalypse. And one of the characters we held closest, Glenn Rhee. Played by Stephen Yeun, Glenn was the heart of the group, clever, kind, and always willing to risk his life for others. From the moment he saved Rick Grimes in Atlanta in Season 1, fans rooted for him like he was family. He wasn't a brooding anti-hero or a muscle-bound warrior. He was an everyday guy who grew into a total badass. Whether it was slipping through hordes of walkers or falling in love with Maggie, Glenn became the show's moral compass. His relationship with Maggie was a rare beam of hope in the show's bleak world. So, yeah, when the Season 7 premiere hit, viewers were not prepared. The series had been teasing the arrival of its most sadistic villain yet, Negan. Played with devilish charm by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Negan came wrapped in menace, sarcasm, and a barbed wire baseball bat named Lucille. And when Season 6 ended with him raising that bat and smashing someone's skull, cut to black, we spent months agonizing over who got the fatal blow. Then came the infamous Season 7 premiere. We watched, horrified, as Negan chose Abraham first. Brutal, yes. Devastating, Absolutely. But then, just when we thought the carnage was over, Daryl lashed out in anger. And that was the tipping point. Negan turned, grinned, and drove Lucille into Glenn's skull. What followed was one of the most graphic and disturbing scenes in TV history. Blood sprayed. Glenn's eye bulged. He tried to speak, gurgling, "Maggie, I'll find you," before the final, sickening blows. Fans were stunned. This wasn't just a death, it was a massacre. And it wasn't just one of our favorites dying. It was watching someone we knew, someone we'd grown with, be destroyed in the most dehumanizing way. The backlash was instant. Social media exploded. Viewers were heartbroken, furious. Some even turned off the show entirely. Ratings for the second episode dropped sharply. Many accused the show of going too far, crossing the line between gritty realism and trauma porn. Glenn's death didn't just hurt, it shattered people. So, why did they do it? According to The Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman, Glenn's fate was sealed long before the cameras rolled. In the comic book, issue 100, Glenn dies at the hands of Negan in the same horrific way. Kirkman said there was just too much emotional fallout tied to that moment. Rick's rage, Maggie's journey, Negan's introduction. It all hinged on that death. "Pulling the thread on this sweater just pulls too many things apart," he admitted. Still, this one hit differently for Kirkman. Glenn's was the first major comic death written after the character had been cast for TV. "It makes things a little weird and more difficult," he confessed. "But I do find myself very hesitant to do character deaths on the show these days. You miss these people." And we did. Fans mourned Glenn like he was real. His kindness, his bravery, his goofy smile, it all made him unforgettable. Losing him wasn't just a plot twist, it was a heartbreak. And honestly, we still haven't recovered. Black Friday, the annual festival of discount madness, where people set alarms for ungodly hours, camp out in parking lots, and go from zero to linebacker the second those store doors swing open. But in 2008, what was supposed to be a day of bargain hunting turned into a tragedy that made everyone stop and ask, when did shopping get this dangerous? It all went down at a Walmart in Valley Stream, New York. The date was November 28, 2008. The time was just before 5 a.m. The scene was utter chaos. A crowd of more than 2,000 shoppers had gathered in the freezing dark, buzzing with the adrenaline of snagging big-screen TVs and kitchen appliances at rock-bottom prices. Tensions were high, excitement was boiling over, and the store doors were not strong enough to hold back a full-blown human tsunami. Among the Walmart employees that morning was 34-year-old Jidimitai Damour, a temporary maintenance worker. He had no idea that his job would place him at the epicenter of a stampede. When the sliding glass doors finally gave way, cracking under the literal pressure of hundreds of eager bodies, the crowd surged forward like a tidal wave. People were not walking in. They were charging, shoving, pushing. Damour was knocked down and trampled, and despite desperate efforts from other employees to help him, the crush of people was too intense. It was pandemonium. Police officers and emergency responders tried to reach Damour, but even they were overwhelmed by the crowd. To make things worse, a pregnant woman and several others were also injured in the stampede. What was most shocking was that some shoppers reportedly got angry when told the store was closing due to the fatal incident, as if a man's life had somehow become a mere speed bump on their way to a half-off blender. Damour's death, caused by asphyxiation from being crushed, sparked nationwide outrage. The idea that a young man could lose his life over retail deals hit hard. Questions flew. Where was the crowd control? Why were proper safety measures not in place? When did saving a few bucks become more important than basic human decency? Walmart faced lawsuits, public backlash, and serious scrutiny. Critics slammed the company for not providing adequate security or planning for such a massive turnout. Damour's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, and government agencies began reevaluating how retail giants handled major sales events. The incident was not just a freak accident, it was a wake-up call. Since then, retailers have made efforts to better manage Black Friday crowds, with more organized lines, ticket systems, increased security, and even staggered door opening times. But the memory of that morning in Valley Stream lingers, a sobering reminder that unchecked consumer frenzy can have real, human consequences. Because behind every deal is a worker setting up shelves, a person standing by the entrance, someone just trying to do their job, and no one, absolutely no one, should lose their life over a sale. On the night of July 7, 2016, what began as a peaceful protest in downtown Dallas quickly turned into one of the deadliest attacks on American law enforcement in recent memory. The protest itself had been organized in response to the recent police shootings of two black men, Alton Sterling in Louisiana and Philando Castile in Minnesota. Across the U.S., tensions were high. Communities were grieving, angry, and demanding justice. But in Dallas that evening, the atmosphere was calm. People marched through the streets, voices raised not in chaos but in hope, calling for change. But then, everything shattered. Wrapping up and people were starting to head home, Micah Xavier Johnson, a 25-year-old Army Reserve veteran, emerged from the crowd. Armed with a rifle and wearing tactical gear, Johnson began firing on police officers with alarming precision. In the chaos that followed, 5 officers were killed and 9 others were injured, along with 2 civilians. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Sirens blaring, people running for cover, officers scrambling to locate the shooter. Johnson wasn't acting randomly. According to reports, he had specifically targeted white police officers. His actions were fueled by anger over the treatment of black Americans by police, and he made it clear, both in his actions and in later negotiations with the police, that this was retaliation. But this wasn't just rage. It was calculated. Johnson had received military training, and it showed. He moved tactically, took cover, and even ambushed officers by firing from behind pillars and walls. At one point, he cornered and fatally shot an officer at close range. The situation turned into a tense standoff inside El Centro College, where Johnson had holed up. For hours, police tried to negotiate with him, attempting to bring the situation to a peaceful end. But Johnson refused to surrender, continuing to fire and threatening to do more harm. After exhausting all other options, the Dallas Police Department made a decision that would make history. They sent in a robot armed with explosives to neutralize him. This marked the first time in U.S. history that law enforcement used a robot to kill a suspect. The explosion killed Johnson and ended the standoff, but the damage had already been done. The city and the nation was left reeling. 5 officers gone, many others wounded, and a community left trying to make sense of the violence. President Obama called it a vicious, calculated, and despicable attack, and cities around the country increased police presence at public events, unsure of what might come next. In the aftermath, people struggled to reconcile the tragedy. The protest had been peaceful. The message had been justice, fairness, accountability. Johnson's actions had twisted that message into something else entirely, something dark and violent. His attack didn't bring people together. It deepened divides. The Black Lives Matter movement, which had nothing to do with the attack, was unfairly blamed in some circles, and the conversation about police reform got even more complicated. Looking back, the 2016 Dallas police ambush wasn't just a horrific event, it was a turning point. It forced the nation to confront uncomfortable truths about race, violence, and justice in America. It showed us how quickly a peaceful demand for change could be overshadowed by a single act of hate. And while Dallas has continued to heal, that night remains a painful reminder of how fragile progress can be, and how important it is to protect the spaces where people come together, not tear them apart. Nothing hits harder than a shocking TV death, the kind that leaves you frozen, mouth open, remote in hand. Whether it's a hero gone too soon, or a twist you never saw coming, These moments haunt fans for years. Today, we're counting down 5 of the darkest, most gut-wrenching deaths in TV history. Fair warning, spoilers ahead. If you've ever cried over a fictional dad who wasn't technically your dad, you're not alone. HBO's The Last of Us became a cultural juggernaut for good reason. Heart-pounding action, devastating emotional stakes, and, at its center, a gruff yet lovable survivor named Joel Miller, played by internet daddy Pedro Pascal. Viewers instantly latched onto his protectiveness over Ellie, the witty, whip-smart teen he basically adopts after the world falls apart. Season 1 left fans breathless. Joel rescued Ellie from a shady hospital operation where doctors planned to kill her for a cure, by any means necessary. In the process, he shot his way out and killed the head surgeon. Morally gray, definitely. But Joel had his reasons, and we still loved him for it. So when Season 2 hit screens, no non-gamers was ready for what came next. Because what came next was Joel's shocking, savage, and totally heartbreaking death. It all starts off pretty innocently. Joel and his brother Tommy are out on patrol when they save a young woman named Abby from a swarm of infected. Classic Joel move. Heroic, maybe even fatherly. Friends are holed up nearby in a ski lodge, so Joel and Tommy follow her. Big mistake. What they don't know is Abby isn't some helpless stranger. She's the daughter of that same surgeon Joel shot back in the hospital, and she's been hunting him for years. The moment they enter that lodge, Joel's fate is sealed. Abby shoots him in the leg, brutal but not fatal. Yet, she stares him down with cold fury. This isn't just revenge, it's deeply personal, and she's not letting him off easy. Joel doesn't beg. In fact, he almost seems to understand. It's like he knows he's about to pay for everything. And then it happens. The golf club. Yeah, you heard right, a golf club. Abby starts beating Joel with it. It's messy, it's violent, and it's mostly off camera. But that doesn't make it easier to watch. Ellie arrives mid-bludgeoning. Screaming in horror as her protector, her dad, is murdered in front of her. The final blow comes not from the club, but from its broken handle, driven into Joel's neck. Quiet, brutal, final. And just like that, Joel Miller is gone. The reaction? Nuclear. Fans were furious. Some gamers were already prepared since the death was pulled nearly frame for frame from The Last of Us Part 2 video game. But the non-gamers? Pure shock. Twitter exploded. Memes flew. Some viewers even swore off the show altogether. Others, though, praised the scene's rawness and bold storytelling. Either way, nobody was okay. Executive producer Craig Mazin defended the decision. "We don't do these things to hurt people," he said. "We're with Ellie. She's experiencing grief and heartbreak, and that's what this story is about." And it's true. The Last of Us isn't just about surviving zombies, it's about surviving loss. Joel's death wasn't random. It was, as Mazin put it, preordained. Even Pedro Pascal knew from day one that Joel wouldn't make it past Season 2. "When I talked to Pedro the first time," Mazin said, "I told him, this will happen. This story doesn't go on for 7 seasons with you in that spot." So yes, Joel had to die, but that doesn't make it hurt any less. We laughed with him, we cried with him, we watched him go from grumpy loner to fierce protector. He wasn't perfect, far from it, but he was ours. And losing him felt like losing a friend. Rest in peace, Joel. You deserved more than a golf club. In June 2017, something tragic and deeply unsettling happened inside a Walmart in Sand Springs, Oklahoma. Katherine Caraway, a 29-year-old woman from Texas, walked into the store on a Friday evening around 6 p.m. What should have been a quick and ordinary trip turned into a heartbreaking story that wouldn't be uncovered for 3 whole days. Katherine went into the family restroom, a locked bathroom stall, and never came out. But here's the question: How does someone stay inside a public restroom stall for 3 days without anyone noticing? Well, employees assumed the bathroom was out of order because the door was locked and they'd placed an "out of order" sign on it. So no one thought to check inside, and tragically, Katherine was left alone, unseen and unreachable. It wasn't until Monday afternoon, 3 days later, that a maintenance worker unlocked the door and made the devastating discovery. The delay shocked the community and raised serious questions about safety and awareness in public spaces. How could someone in distress be invisible for so long? What does that say about the way we care for each other? The autopsy revealed that Katherine died from cardiac arrhythmia caused by difluorothane toxicity. Difluorothane? What's that? It's a chemical found in common products like compressed air dusters. Those cans used to blow dust off your keyboard or electronics. Unfortunately, some people inhale these chemicals to get high, a dangerous form of substance abuse known as huffing. Investigators found several empty cans of these air dusters in Katherine's vehicle, suggesting she was likely using them shortly before her death. This is the sad part. Huffing may seem like a quick escape, but it's incredibly risky. Difluorothane interferes with the heart's normal rhythm and can cause sudden cardiac arrest, even in otherwise healthy people. Katherine's death shows just how deadly this practice can be. Police found no evidence of foul play or criminal activity. The death was ruled accidental, no villain, no crime, just a tragic accident. But that doesn't make it any less heartbreaking. It also raises broader concerns about addiction, mental health, and how communities and businesses can better support people struggling with these issues. And here's another question. How can someone be inside a locked bathroom stall in a busy store for days without being noticed? It's a chilling reminder of how easy it is for people who are suffering, whether from addiction, mental illness, or loneliness, to go unseen and unsupported. Katherine's story shines a light on that invisibility and urges us all to think harder about safety and compassion in our communities. Her death isn't just a sad accident, it's a call to action. It highlights the urgent need for greater awareness of inhalant abuse, better mental health support, and improved safety protocols in public places, especially ones serving families and vulnerable individuals. In the end, Katherine Caraway's story is heartbreaking. A young woman lost her life in a place that should have been safe. It reminds us how fragile life can be and how important it is to notice the people around us. No one should be left alone and unseen when they need help most. On January 6, 2021, something happened in Washington, D.C. that shook the very foundations of American democracy. The United States Capitol, the iconic building where laws are made and the peaceful transfer of power is symbolized, became the scene of an unprecedented and alarming event. That day, thousands of supporters of then-President Donald Trump gathered for a rally near the National Mall, energized by weeks of claims that the 2020 presidential election had been stolen. Despite no credible evidence supporting these claims, the crowd was fired up by Trump's speech that morning, where he urged them to fight like hell to challenge the election results. As Congress was meeting inside to formally certify Joe Biden's victory, the rally quickly escalated. The crowd surged toward the Capitol building, breaching security barriers and overwhelming the police. What followed was chaos. Rioters broke windows, smashed doors, and stormed inside, forcing lawmakers to evacuate or hide in secure locations. It was a terrifying breach of a place that represents the core of American governance, carried out by people who believed they were defending their country, though their actions actually threatened the democratic process. The violence and destruction led to multiple injuries among law enforcement and rioters, and tragically several deaths were linked to the events that day. The images of rioters wandering the halls of Congress, waving flags, and sitting in the Speaker's office shocked the world. For many, it was hard to believe that something like this could happen in the United States. In the aftermath, the Capitol riot became a national crisis. Law enforcement and intelligence agencies scrambled to respond, and the National Guard was deployed to restore order. The event sparked widespread condemnation from political leaders across the spectrum, and it led to the second impeachment of President Trump, who was charged with inciting the insurrection. Though he was later acquitted by the Senate, the damage to the country's political landscape was undeniable. Investigations into the riot uncovered how failures in security planning contributed to the breach, and how some individuals inside and outside government may have played roles in encouraging or enabling the attack. The House of Representatives formed a select committee to dig deeper into what happened and to recommend ways to prevent such an event from ever happening again. The Capitol riot was more than just a violent protest. It was a direct attack on democracy itself. It exposed deep divisions in American society and showed how dangerous misinformation and distrust in institutions can become when mixed with political passion. As the country continues to heal and reflect on that day, the hope remains that lessons will be learned and safeguards will be strengthened to protect the peaceful transfer of power, the very heart of democratic rule. If you've ever watched Better Call Saul, you know it's more than just a prequel. It's a slow-burn masterpiece of morality, identity, and, well, chaos. The show follows Jimmy McGill, a scrappy lawyer with a good heart and questionable ethics, as he spirals into becoming Saul Goodman, the slick criminal attorney we met in Breaking Bad. And while the show gave us drug cartels, scams, and courtroom drama, no one expected one of its most jaw-dropping deaths to come not from the cartel, but from a man in a tailored suit with a Bluetooth headset, Howard Hamlin. Now, Howard wasn't exactly fan-favorite material from the start. He was the guy who looked like he ran a yoga studio in the Hamptons and had probably never jaywalked in his life. Still, over time, viewers grew to understand him, not as a villain, but as a man doing his best within a broken system. While Jimmy and Kim, the show's ride-or-die couple, slid deeper into morally gray schemes, Howard stayed polished, professional, and maybe a little smug, but basically decent. Season 6 set Howard up as the mark for Jimmy and Kim's most elaborate scam yet. The plan: ruin Howard's reputation so a multi-million-dollar class-action lawsuit would settle early, giving them a massive payday. Fake drug use, doctored photos, and double-crossing detectives. The whole con was deliciously cruel, and somehow Howard took the hits with grace until he didn't. In the mid-season finale titled Plan and Execution, Howard storms into Jimmy and Kim's apartment, furious. He finally connects the dots and calls them out. "You're soulless," he says, a haunting accusation that felt like a mirror to the audience too. It's peak drama. The music stills. The lighting tightens. It feels like a confrontation 7 seasons in the making. And then, everything shatters. Without warning, Lalo Salamanca, a literal cartel psychopath who's been crawling through sewers and plotting a massacre, steps out of the shadows like a horror movie villain. Howard, completely unaware of Lalo or his world, looks confused. "Who's this guy?" he asks. Bang. Just like that, Howard Hamlin's brains hit the wall. It's not just shocking, it's disturbing. Lalo, with zero emotion, shoots Howard in the head like swatting a fly. No build-up, no threats. 1 second Howard is mid-sentence, the next he's lifeless on the floor. Eyes still open. The camera lingers just long enough for the horror to settle in. It's the moment Jimmy's two worlds, the legal and the lethal, violently collide. Fans were stunned. Reddit exploded. Memes of Howard as a fallen angel in a suit trended. People who once joked about Howard's perfect hair suddenly mourned him like a fallen brother. Some even rewatched early seasons just to appreciate him more. Many agreed Howard didn't deserve this. He wasn't a saint, but he was certainly not cartel execution material. Actor Patrick Fabian, who played Howard, said he knew the end was coming before filming, but reading the script still shocked him. "It felt like graduating high school," he said. "But if you're gonna get shot, getting shot by Tony Dalton with all that charisma, not a bad way to go." Director Tom Schnauz explained the death had to happen. It was the cost of Jimmy and Kim's descent, proof that their cons have deadly consequences. And for Howard, who had spent years cleaning up after other people's messes, His death was the ultimate injustice. A man who lived by the rules, taken out by people who didn't even know his name. Howard's final scene became iconic not for violence, but for tragedy. A man who never got the credit he deserved, dying in a room full of people who had already written him off. And that, more than the gunshot, is what made fans grieve. He wasn't perfect, but man, he didn't deserve to go out like that. It was the tail end of 2014, just after the holiday chaos, and like many parents, Veronica Rutledge found herself at Walmart in Hayden, Idaho, doing some post-Christmas shopping. She wasn't just any mom, though. Veronica was a 29-year-old nuclear scientist, intelligent, responsible, and deeply loved by her family. She also happened to be a legal gun owner with a concealed carry permit, something not uncommon in her community. That day, she brought her toddler son along for the quick errand. He was just 2 years old, small enough to ride in the front of the shopping cart while she navigated the aisles, likely looking for deals or picking up everyday essentials. What happened next was the kind of thing that seems like it belongs in a darkly ironic cautionary tale, except it was painfully, tragically real. While in the electronics section, Veronica turned her attention away for just a moment. Her purse, which was designed for concealed carry, rested in the cart within reach of her son. Inside the purse was a loaded 9mm handgun, a Smith & Wesson M&P Shield, one of the most popular handguns for self-defense. In the blink of an eye, her toddler managed to unzip the purse, reach in, and pull the trigger. One shot was fired. It struck Veronica in the head, killing her instantly. The store fell into stunned silence as people scrambled to understand what had just happened. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. The news rippled outward, first through the town, then across the country. A child had accidentally shot and killed his own mother in a Walmart. It was shocking, heartbreaking, and surreal. Veronica's husband, Dalton Rutledge, wasn't with them at the time, but he arrived shortly afterward, likely in disbelief and horror. The couple had been visiting family for the holidays and were well known in their community. Dalton later described his wife as a brilliant woman, an amazing person, a dedicated mother, someone who had grown up around guns and knew how to handle them safely. But that's part of what made the incident so deeply unsettling. Veronica was the kind of person who took safety seriously. She didn't flaunt her firearm. She carried it in a purse designed specifically to keep it hidden and secure. But toddlers are curious, fast, and unpredictable, and in those few seconds of innocent exploration, tragedy struck. The story caught national attention, not because it was sensational, but because it raised serious questions about gun safety, about how easily things can go wrong, and about the heartbreaking fact that being responsible doesn't always mean being immune to accidents. It ignited debates about whether concealed carry purses are really safe around children, whether guns should ever be carried into stores, and what can be done to prevent this kind of accident from happening again. In the aftermath, the family was left grieving not only for the loss of Veronica, but also for the unimaginable weight the young boy would someday have to carry, even if he was far too young to understand what had happened. It's the kind of story that forces people to stop and think, not just about policy or rights, but about the very real human cost of a single misstep. There's no punchline here, no ironic twist to wrap it up, just a heartbreaking moment in a Walmart aisle. A moment that shattered a family, shook a community, and served as a sobering reminder that safety isn't just about good intentions. Sometimes it's about anticipating the unthinkable and realizing just how quickly life can change. On the morning of July 17, 2016, the city of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was still reeling from the recent police shooting of Alton Sterling, a 37-year-old black man whose death had sparked national outrage. Protests and public frustration were high, and tension between police and the community was palpable. Then, in a devastating turn of events, that tension exploded into tragedy. Shortly before 9 a.m., a man dressed in black and armed with a semi-automatic rifle and multiple other weapons began moving through a commercial area near a gas station and car wash. The man was Gavin Eugene Long, a 29-year-old former U.S. Marine from Kansas City, Missouri. Long wasn't just passing through, he had come to Baton Rouge with a mission, one that would end in violence and death. A 911 call had been made about a suspicious person in the area. Officers responded, unaware that it was a deliberate trap. Long ambushed them, using tactical movements and cover to his advantage. Within minutes, 6 law enforcement officers were shot. 3 were killed: Montrell Jackson, Matthew Gerald, and Brad Garafola, and 3 others were injured, 1 critically. Witnesses described the scene as chaotic and terrifying, with rapid gunfire echoing through the area and people running for safety. Police rushed to contain the situation. A gun battle broke out as officers attempted to neutralize the threat. Eventually, a SWAT officer shot and killed Long, ending the deadly encounter. But the damage had already been done. Baton Rouge had just experienced one of the most violent attacks on law enforcement in recent U.S. history. Investigations soon revealed that Long had carefully planned the ambush. He had driven to Baton Rouge days earlier, rented a car, and scouted the area. He recorded videos expressing his views angry, militant, and filled with anti-government and anti-police rhetoric. He saw himself as a vigilante, calling for violent action in response to police brutality. Though he claimed to act alone, he cited groups like the Sovereign Citizens Movement and seemed to embrace an ideology centered around black nationalism and armed resistance. The ambush came just 10 days after a similar attack in Dallas, where 5 officers were killed during a protest. The Baton Rouge shooting further inflamed an already fragile national mood. It wasn't just another act of violence. It was part of a disturbing pattern, where lone gunmen were taking matters into their own hands in the most destructive way possible. The aftermath of the attack left Baton Rouge shaken. The community mourned not just the officers who died, but the deepening divide between police and the people they serve. Officer Montrell Jackson, one of the victims, had actually written a heartfelt Facebook post days before his death, expressing the pain of being both black and a police officer during such a turbulent time. His words resonated across the country. "I'm tired, physically and emotionally. I swear to God I love this city, but I wonder if this city loves me." Long's actions were condemned across the board by activists, political leaders, and citizens alike. They did not represent a movement or a cause. They represented a breaking point in a single individual, whose path to violence did nothing to bring about justice or change. Instead, it deepened wounds and made it harder for communities and police to rebuild trust. The 2016 Baton Rouge police ambush stands as a sobering reminder of the consequences of escalating rhetoric, unchecked anger, and violence masked as justice. Claimed heroes and left a scar on a city that was already hurting. Game of Thrones wasn't just a fantasy series. It was a full-blown cultural obsession. From fire-breathing dragons to political backstabbing that made DC look tame, the show had it all. But most of all, it had characters we rooted for, cried over, and sometimes shouted at through our screens. At the heart of it was Robb Stark, the young noble king in the North, who stepped up after his father, Ned Stark, was famously beheaded. We thought Robb would avenge his dad, take the throne, and restore some order to Westeros. We were so wrong. Robb had it all going for him: charisma, strategy, a badass direwolf, and a loyal army. But if Game of Thrones taught us anything, it's that honor doesn't guarantee survival. And love? Well, that's a death sentence. Robb fell in love with Talisa, a battlefield healer, not exactly the arranged bride promised to his ally, Walder Frey. Breaking that deal was like RSVPing to your own funeral. To patch things up, Robb offered his uncle up as a backup groom. Walder Frey accepted, on the outside, but inside, he was plotting one of the most cold-blooded betrayals in TV history. Enter The Red Wedding, the 9th episode of Season 3, chillingly titled The Reigns of Castamere. If you've seen the show, you know the 9th episode always hits like a truck. This one, it hit like a semi on fire. What started as a joyful wedding feast turned into a nightmare dipped in blood. The Freys locked the doors, cued their ominous house anthem, and all hell broke loose. Rob's pregnant wife, Talisa, was stabbed repeatedly in the stomach. Yes, you read that right. It was brutal, personal, and impossible to watch without feeling nauseous. Then came Rob, shot full of arrows like some twisted medieval pincushion. And finally, Catelyn Stark, Rob's mother and the show's original iron-willed matriarch, screaming in horror before her own throat was slit. The massacre was total. Rob's entire army, gone. Legacy, wiped out. Fans didn't just cry, they howled. Social media exploded with disbelief, reaction videos of viewers screaming, crying, or just sitting in stunned silence went viral. The betrayal felt personal, like we had just lost family. And that was the point. The show didn't offer any final words, no slow-motion goodbye, not even a heroic last stand. Just horror, just silence, like a punch in the gut, and then another. Producers David Benioff and D.B. Weiss explained that this moment was why they even took on the show in the first place. In an interview, they said the lack of a death speech or any closure made the scene more real and shocking. "You're deprived of even that satisfaction," Benioff said. "It's just like a kidney punch." And yeah, they nailed that feeling. George R.R. Martin, the author who dreamed up this soul crusher, said he based it on real-life betrayals from Scottish history, like the Black Dinner. He admitted that while he made up a lot, history had already done the heavy lifting when it came to savage plot twists. Richard Madden, who played Robb Stark, insisted they not change a thing, even though it meant killing off his own character. He believed the total wipeout of Rob, Talisa, and their unborn child was necessary to make the tragedy complete. "There's something more tragic about having it all be cut short," he said. And fans? We were left shattered. Because Rob wasn't just a character, he was hope. He was justice. He was the good guy in a cruel world, and watching him die like that felt like losing a friend. 13 years after it was written, the Red Wedding still stands as one of the darkest, most unforgettable deaths in television history. And man, what a shame it had to end that way. Back in December 2012, in Houston, Texas, what started as an ordinary night at a Walmart turned into a tragic and deeply troubling event. Shelley Marie Frey, a 27-year-old mother of two, found herself at the center of a deadly encounter that would raise questions about law enforcement, use of force, and the complicated role of security officers in retail spaces. The story begins inside the Walmart store, where loss prevention officers suspected Shelley and two companions of shoplifting. Whether the suspicion was justified or not, the situation escalated quickly. Shelley and her friends attempted to leave the store, but things didn't go as planned. An off-duty Harris County Sheriff's deputy named Lewis Campbell, who was working as a private security officer, was called to intervene. Campbell was not on official duty with the sheriff's office at the time, but his presence would soon change the course of the night. According to reports, as Shelley tried to escape, she struck Campbell with her purse and ran to a vehicle waiting nearby. Deputy Campbell pursued the vehicle, and as it began to drive away with him partially inside, he fired his gun, hitting Shelley in the neck. She was later found deceased at a nearby apartment complex, an outcome that shocked many and ignited a firestorm of debate. This wasn't just another shoplifting case gone wrong. It raised critical questions about when and how force should be used, especially deadly force, and who is authorized to make those life or death decisions. Shelley was a mother. 2 children were reportedly in the vehicle at the time. Was it necessary for Campbell to shoot? That's what her family and many others wanted to know. In the aftermath, Shelley's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Walmart, Deputy Campbell, and the security company employing him. They argued that the use of deadly force was excessive and unjustified, especially given the presence of children and the nature of the alleged crime. On the flip side, Campbell and his supporters maintained that he acted in self-defense and within his rights as a security officer and law enforcement professional, even though he was off duty. The Harris County District Attorney's Office investigated the shooting, but ultimately decided not to press charges against Campbell. That decision left many feeling unsettled and added fuel to ongoing conversations about police accountability and the use of force. What makes this case even more complex is that it wasn't an isolated incident. Around the same time, there were other shootings involving off-duty officers and suspected shoplifters at Walmart stores in the Houston area. These repeated events sparked wider debates about Walmart's policies, the roles of off-duty officers in retail security, and the broader challenges around race, power, and policing in America. This tragedy forces us to think hard about the balance between protecting property and protecting human life, especially in communities where trust between citizens and law enforcement is fragile. It reminds us that behind every headline is a real person with a story, a family left grieving, questions left unanswered, and a society struggling to find justice. So, while this story started with a simple suspicion of shoplifting, it ended with a powerful and painful reminder of the serious consequences when authority, fear, and split-second decisions collide. Shelley Marie Frey's death remains a sobering example of the need for better policies, clearer boundaries, and greater accountability in situations that can so quickly spiral out of control. Imagine you're at a coffee shop on a quiet Sunday morning in late November 2009, just trying to wake up and mentally prepare for work. That's exactly what 4 Lakewood police officers were doing at a Forza coffee shop in Parkland, Washington. They weren't in hot pursuit of bad guys or cracking big cases. They were simply grabbing some caffeine and catching a breather before their shift. But what started as an ordinary morning turned into one of the most shocking and heartbreaking events in Washington's law enforcement history. Those 4 officers, Sergeant Mark Renninger, and Officers Ronald Owens, Tina Griswold, and Gregory Richards, never got the chance to leave that coffee shop. A man named Morris Clemens walked in and opened fire in what can only be called calculated ambush. The officers didn't even have time to react. But in a moment of incredible bravery, Officer Richards managed to draw his weapon and return fire, injuring Clemens before succumbing to his own injuries. That one shot would play a huge role in how the next couple of days unfolded. Now, who exactly was this Clemens guy? Oh, just your average walking red flag with a criminal record that stretched back to the 1980s. He had a long history of violent offenses in Arkansas and somehow kept slipping through the cracks. Most controversially, he had actually been granted clemency years earlier by then-Governor Mike Huckabee. Yep, that decision came back to haunt the political world big time. At the time of the shooting, Clemens was out on bail for multiple charges and had been acting erratically, making threats and talking nonsense about divine missions and law enforcement. After the shooting, all hell broke loose. Authorities launched a massive manhunt that involved hundreds of officers, roadblocks, helicopters, and tip lines that never stopped ringing. It was an all-out scramble to track this guy down. For nearly 2 days, Clemens managed to stay one step ahead of the cops, using safe houses, changing locations, and relying on a small group of friends and relatives who were foolish enough to help him hide. But eventually, the law caught up. On December 1st, a Seattle police officer spotted a suspicious vehicle parked on a quiet street. When Clemens showed up nearby, the officer recognized him, gave him a command to stop, and Clemens made one final, fatal move. The officer opened fire and took him down, ending one of the most intense manhunts the state had ever seen. The aftermath of the shooting was massive. The community was in shock. Thousands of people came out to mourn the officers, hold vigils and support their families. Donations poured in. Streets were lined with flags, and people who had never even met the victims felt like they had lost someone close. It was that kind of moment heartbreaking, unifying, unforgettable. At the same time, people started asking some very serious questions. How could someone with Clemens' history still be walking free? What does this say about our bail system, our parole system, and the policies that are supposed to keep dangerous individuals behind bars? The The shooting sparked a storm of debates and reforms in law enforcement and the justice system that continue to echo today. So yeah, what started as a quiet morning coffee run became a moment that changed lives, policies, and a community forever. A tragic reminder that sometimes, even in the most ordinary places, history shows up uninvited. Let's be honest, Succession isn't the kind of show you just watch, you devour it. It's HBO at its sharpest, a twisted tale of wealth, power, and family dysfunction that feels part Greek tragedy, part billionaire soap opera. At the center of it all, Logan Roy, the brutal, brilliant, terrifying patriarch you love to hate and kind of fear. Played masterfully by Brian Cox, Logan was more than a CEO. He was a force of nature, and from episode 1 we knew something was up. He suffered a stroke right out of the gate. So sure, maybe we all saw it coming, but not like this. It happened in season 4, episode 3, an episode misleadingly titled Connor's Wedding. While the Roy siblings gathered on a yacht to celebrate their brother's cringy, awkward nuptials, Logan was up in the air, literally flying to Sweden to try to rescue a failing business deal. And then he collapsed. No big buildup, no last words, just a sudden, invisible moment that changed everything. The brilliance? We barely see Logan at all. Most of the episode unfolds in frantic, muffled phone calls between Tom, Shiv's estranged husband, stuck on the plane. He's trying to explain what's happening. They're trying to understand. Viewers are stuck in the same helpless fog. Is he dead? Is this real? No dramatic music, no fade to black, just panicked voices, shaky hands, and an overwhelming sense of what the hell is happening. There's one haunting image, the phone pressed against Logan's lifeless ear, while CPR is being performed. Shiv's voice trembles through the line, trying to reach her father, even though deep down she knows he's already gone. That shot? It's a Frankenstein composite, Logan's head filmed separately, stitched onto a stunt double's chest being compressed. Cold, clinical, devastating. And the real gut punch? There's no closure, no tearful bedside scene. No, I've always loved you moment. Just the awful modern reality of a loved one dying while you're not there. And all you get is a choppy phone call with bad reception. Fans were stunned. Twitter exploded. Succession Nation went into collective mourning. Did that just happen? They asked. It was like killing off Tony Soprano mid-season, but more sudden. Critics called it one of TV's boldest moves, and viewers couldn't stop crying, even if they weren't sure why. After all, Logan was awful, right? But damn, we felt that loss. Director Mark Mylod revealed that Logan's death had been planned for years. The goal? To make it feel messy, inconvenient, and real. Great drama out of mundanity, as he put it. And it worked. Every camera angle was chosen to make us feel like voyeurs, trapped in the grief, unable to look away. And Brian Cox? He didn't even lie down for most of it. The guy had earned his rest. In the end, Logan Roy's death was so powerful, not because it was loud, but because it was silent, unexpected, undignified, raw. And fans were left grieving not just the character, but the end of a chaotic relationship we'd all become weirdly invested in. Love him or loathe him, Logan Roy was family, and when he died, it felt like we lost a piece of TV history,